Hi, Matt with eTrailer. If you have a 2025 Ram 1500 and you're looking for a more affordable rack just to take all your equipment to the work site or from point A to point B, then the eTrailer truck rack, ladder rack is going to be a great option for you. So let's check it out. What I like about a ladder rack is it's really going to allow you to maximize what your bed can do. Now you will be able to fit a lot back here, but having this extra level is just going to pretty much double your space. And on top of that, if you have those extra long items like ladders, lumbers, or even kayaks, this is going to allow you to clear your cab so you don't have to have anything sticking out from the back of your bed. Now, how this one really differs from other options out there isn't going to be by very much. The biggest thing that stands out about this rack is it's going to be a lot more affordable compared to other options out there. Now, it might not be the prettiest one around. If you are looking for something that looks a little bit nicer, then I'd recommend the Thule TracOne ladder rack. It's also super easy to use, but if you're looking for something just to get you from point A to point B and be a little more affordable, then this is going to be the way to go. But to take a closer look at this, I'm just going to break this down by the parts, and we're going to start at the top and then go to the bottom. So over here on the side, we are going to have these sidebars. And they're going to do a couple things for us. First thing is they're just going to give us extra support for this rack so it stays nice and sturdy. And they're also going to act as load stops. So if you have your load up here and it is shifting around a little bit, this is going to prevent it from falling off. Another thing we're going to have on here is at the very back, we're going to have this handlebar. This is going to make it a little bit easier to actually access the bed of your truck if you ever need to get in here. And these are going to connect to your crossbars. So we are going to have 4 of these. 2 of them are going to be over the bed, and 2 are going to be over the cab, acting as our cantilever. And what's nice about having this many is we're just getting more support for extra long loads. If you have anything that does have a lot of flex to it, maybe some piping, this is going to be great, especially for your cab so it doesn't make contact and scratch up your roof. And we're going to move down to this upright we have. You are going to have 4 of them. And they are all going to have some tie-off points on them. They're just going to be different size holes. You can use that to tie off any type of hooks, straps, whatever you have. Just give you a lot of different options. And speaking of those options, we're going to have a cleat on the back side of it, facing outwards. And what you can use that cleat for is if you have any rope that you use to tie off your loads up top, you can use that. Or what I've seen a lot is people have cables or just put the cables on there, either if they're at the job site or if they're driving down the road. If you are going to drive like that, I would just recommend finding something else to strap that down to your upright, just for that extra security. Now, our front upright is going to be a little bit different. So our back upright is going to be stationary. The front one, though, this can actually move backwards and forward. And it's not going to be something on the demand. It's going to be more so when you're initially outfitting this on your bed, because we're going to have a lot of nuts and bolts that have to move around, so that can be pretty difficult to move if you need to. But that ability to move is just allowing us to get a universal fit so it can fit with a wide range of beds. And at the very bottom, we are going to have these feet. These feet are actually giving us a really good fit today. Now we do have a little bit of a gap here. That's pretty minor. All the other sides are pretty flush. But this is kind of giving us more of a sleek finish, at least on the bed rails. We're also going to have some holes on the very top and on the sides of it. These other holes are actually for if you want to drill into your bed to make this more of a permanent installation. But what I really like about this kit is because we're going to have these J-hooks. These J-hooks are just going to use some nuts and clamps, and the fact that we are using nuts and clamps doesn't make this a permanent installation, and there's going to be no drilling required. But let's move over to see how this is going to sit on your bed. So the first measurement I want to get is going to be the space we have in our bed underneath our crossbars. So this is going to be just about 48 inches. So if you have anything taller than 48 inches that you're trying to put back here, you might have some difficulties. You might have to find it just a different way to rearrange it. Now for the total height it's going to add to your vehicle, if we go from our bed rails to the top of our rack rails, that's going to be about 33 inches. So that kind of lets you know how much space you have. So if you're going through any low clearance areas, try to keep this in mind. What I recommend doing is just taking the total height of how high your bed is sitting, then getting your ladder rack. And if you have anything on top of your crossbars, make sure to include that if it goes above the top of these rails so you don't hit anything. And looking over at the coverage we have on our cab, this is covering up a majority of it. So as you can see, we don't have to really worry about too much making contact with anything here. And it's sitting up a decent height too. So if you have a sunroof on here, it's most likely not going to make contact with this. And if we move back some, we can see how it's fitting on our bed. Now we do have a 5.5 foot bed here, and there's plenty of clearance. We can actually pull this in or out some. If you look at this point where this bracket is, it can either push forward to where this other plate is or forward to where that bar is. And that kind of what gives it that universal fit. So if you have a different sized bed, it most likely will work. Now something to consider is how it's going to interact on the back of your bed. So right at the very back, we do have this stake pocket, and I left that open just in case you don't want to cover yours up. Now you could cover it up, you just have to adjust it, and if you do adjust it, I'd recommend adjusting it before you get it on the bed, because once you have it there, it's going to be pretty difficult to move. And this is also going to have a pretty decent weight capacity of 1,000 pounds, so it will be able to handle most things you throw at it. Now it's just important you just check what your bed is rated for. Now this most likely will not exceed what your bed can handle. It's more so is if you already have your bed loaded and you have this loaded on top of that, then you might start exceeding something. So definitely just keep that in mind. Now in my opinion, I think this is a pretty solid option if you are someone who works in the trades and you're looking for something to help carry your lumber, your ladders, or anything along those lines from point A to point B, because maybe you're either on a budget or you're just starting up. Now, if you're someone a little bit more established and you have a little bit more room to kind of play with, and you want a nicer finish to the bed of your truck, then I would go with the Thule TracOne. Now, the Thule TracOne, just as the base, is okay. You actually can get it though with a cantilever too, and that's where I think it would really be a lot more helpful. There's also going to be some that do have some slides that you can actually slide this back and forth on your bed to help maneuver around whatever you have back there, but really it's just going to depend on what your needs are. But either way you go, they're both going to be great options, and what I like about them is you don't have to drill into your bed. Now I will say with the etrailer truck rack, that is a little bit more of an installation because it's going to be a little more tedious, especially initially assembling your rack. But we do talk about a lot of tips and tricks here, so if you are curious to see this process, just stay tuned. We'll walk you through it. To start off the installation, we want to get our truck rack out, and when you have it here, you want to make sure it's still loose so you can make any adjustments if need be. And if you are having issues with assembling this, then I'd recommend checking out our assembly video. I give a lot of tips and tricks to help you out with that. Now, we want to make sure everything's going to work with our bed, and what I mean by that is our measurements. So if we come over here to the bed, I want to make sure that this is going to fit within the length. So we just measure this out and then measure out the length of our legs. And then we're going to get the width too. So get that measurement too and just double check that your legs are going to fit with that. Now if they don't fit with that, that's why we let them loose. And now we can just adjust this some. And once you're done with that, we can get it on the back of our bed. Now when you're getting it on your bed, you want to make sure you grab a friend to help you out today. I got Tom with me. You might need to even grab another friend to help you out too, because this is going to be a little bit heavy and awkward. But what we're going to do is have one person in the bed and one person on the back side as we lift this up and guide it over. Now we want to just make sure we take our time with this, try to make sure everything stays in line with our bed, and just slowly lower everything down. And then afterwards, we can make any adjustments if need be. We made some adjustments to get a better fit out of this, and one of the big things I did was get this upright as close to the cab as possible, where this is still a fit. Now I might need to adjust it later on to really counteract anything underneath your bed rails, but we'll talk about that when we get to the clamps. But you'll notice on the back side, near to our tailgate, this leg or this foot is kind of off. We're not making contact right now. That's okay as long as you have 3 legs making contact and it feels sturdy. And what I mean by that is, if I come over here, this feels like it's not going to topple over. Now, if you left your legs pretty loose and it's wobbling quite a bit, I'd recommend tightening those up a little bit. And once you've done that, then we can start installing our clamps. There's a few things you want to make sure before we actually get that clamp on, and I want to try to get this foot as flush as possible. So we left everything loose. This should be able to pivot that just a tad bit, so it sits a little bit better. I'm already liking that a lot more now. And what I'm going to do is move over to those clamps. So I already have a flat washer and a split washer on there. And the way this is going to go on is you're going to have this flat section that's going to go underneath your bed rail. This threaded area is going to go through that hole just like that. Now, something to watch out for is if you have anything impeding you underneath your bed rails. That's pretty common if you got any type of little clips that keep this plastic section on your bed, or if you have just some bumps. But right now, this is feeling pretty flush. And once it is, I'm just going to grab this little nut that comes with the kit and thread it on. And we'll put another one on over here. And afterwards, since our ladder rack is kind of skewed, one of those legs isn't making contact, I want to get a better fit, so I'm going to go to the leg diagonal from the one I'm working on right now. Just make sure when you are putting those clamps on that those washers are going on top, just like this, and we have that nut that tops it off. Now sometimes you'll notice this is a little bit of an angle. There's a couple things to think about, and one of the things is sometimes what helps is if you apply pressure to this as you tighten this down. That'll alleviate some of it. But underneath here, what happens typically, I'm just barely evading this one divot here. So we're still getting a pretty good fit. But on the very back over here, we're going to have this little ledge. That's going to be pretty much down these whole rails. So typically your clamps are going to make just a little bit of contact with them, causing that little bit of an angle. Eventually, you're going to come over to the side that is hanging off, if you do have that. And the trick to doing this is make sure this is loose enough to really adjust. I'm going to pull this as close to me as possible. I typically like saving this one for last, just because we're going to have a lot more of a better hold from the other sides. And then we'll just start installing our clamps the same way we did on the other sides. And since I was able to pull in those other sides, it made this process much simpler to do. I really didn't have to fight with it as much. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure we don't tighten this down all the way, because we got to check how our overall fit is looking at the moment. And what we're really looking for at this point is to make sure everything's looking pretty even on either side. So we're looking for something that's not skewed. So if it feels like it's shifted to one side, we're going to try to adjust that. And we're looking at these crossbars here at the very top. We're trying to make sure that is parallel to the cab of our truck. And right now this is looking good. What you might need to do is just apply some pressure to one of your uprights to shift it in the direction that will level everything out. You might have to go back and forth in a couple spots, but after when you do that, then we can just come back through and tighten everything down. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to start at the feet. I'm going to apply pressure to them to make sure they're as flush as possible to our bed rails, and then I'm going to start working my way up, tightening all my bolts. For this, you are going to need a 17mm, a 19mm, and a 24mm socket and wrench. And what I recommend doing is just tightening all your bolts. Even if you have one that's already tightened down, just do it again just to make sure you're not missing one. Once you have everything secured down and tightened, then I'm just going to come over here, give this a good shake test. I'm moving the whole vehicle, so this feels pretty good. Afterwards, you can load this up with whatever gear you have and take it out for a ride. But that's just a look at some of the features and the installation of the eTrailer truck rack on the back of our 2025 Ram 1500. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.